Hi, I'm Laura Novich. I am a sustainability strategist and partner at Hyloh. Hyloh is a materials consultancy. We help organizations with their material and sustainability challenges. My focus is on the end of life of products and materials, specifically reuse, repair, recycling. So before we get into the meat of our project, the first question that we should ask is why should we even care about textiles and textile repair? Well, our consumption habits and the ease and ability to quickly buy low cost clothing and accessories is really starting to be a problem. The world now consumes about 80 billion new pieces of clothing every year, which is roughly 400% more than the amount we consumed just 2 decades ago. We're seeing this problem increase, over 20 years, which is roughly the same time period that we're seeing increases in our global temperatures. And we know that the fashion industry accounts for nearly 10% of greenhouse gas emissions. Our clothing requires not only energy to operate manufacturing facilities, but also raw material extraction, water-intensive dyeing processes, petroleum-based materials, monoculture cotton farms, right? Transportation and shipping. There's so many resources that go into making just one piece of clothing. Not to mention the people that are also involved, and one of the main reasons that clothing can cost so little. So, our overconsumption and laissez faire disposal habits is a significant problem, and it's becoming a huge solid waste issue. And we're seeing it in our own communities. Textile waste that accumulates each year in the US alone is roughly 17 million tons. So, to answer the original question of why is textile repair important, it's a proven way to dramatically and drastically reduce textile waste by just keeping what we already have. So let's dive in a little bit on what textiles and textile waste looks like in New York City. So according to the New York City Department of Sanitation's most recent waste characterization study, which is from 2017, a new one is coming out in 2024, approximately 6% of curbside collected waste is textile. So what does the 6% actually mean? Well, it translates to roughly 200,000 tons of textile waste a year in New York City alone. And that's roughly 46 pounds of textiles per household per year being thrown out. That's a very large problem, especially since a lot of those textiles can most likely continue to be used. So knowing what textile waste looks like in New York City, and it's intense, right? But it's just one part of a very complex system with so many elements, involvements, and really shaped by our behaviors, our consumption and disposal habits. So how do we start to fix it? 200,000 tons a year seems to be a problem. What do we do? What do we even do first, or what do we do next? So first, it's important to note that textile reuse and repair, it already exists within New York City, right? Vintage clothing has always been a cornerstone of New York City's fashion scene. Charity organizations with thrift shops where the funds support their missions, different social service organizations that accept in-kind donations, local shoemakers, tailors, these formal settings have existed for a very long time and are well established. According to research that Hyloh conducted with DSNY in 2022, there were roughly 6,800 physical reuse, repair, and rental businesses across all 5 boroughs. The products that they handled varied from not just textiles, but there were over 6,800 actual places. However, to that point, a lot of textile reuse and repair is often intangible, right? It's not well defined or understood, and a lot of it is very informal. So, think buy nothing groups, stoop sales, a neighbor fixing your jacket. So much reuse and repair exists in this unquantifiable way. But broken, potentially repairable items, they continue to pose barriers towards the progress of the reuse sector of New York City, as it ultimately becomes a solid waste issue. When, these items are not fixed or reused or donated, they're then put on the curb and they are destined to be picked up by DSNY and sent to the landfill. Repair is a crucial component of circularity and sustainability, fixing an item to keep it in use and extend its life, reducing waste and its environmental impact. And so from previous studies that Hyloh has done with DSNY, we've identified additional topics to research in order to advance the overall understanding of the complex reuse sector of New York City and its environmental impact. These topics varied, but they included that one, donation centers are continuing to receive an influx of broken items. And two, there is a vast, just vast hyperlocal community-based reuse and repair outlets that currently exist, but they're still pretty undocumented, right, and very siloed. So it's hard to redevelop or fix a system if we haven't really identified how that system exists. So a lot of us are visual, and it's helpful to see a system really laid out with all of the points, and where they are in space. So how do we start to quantify it and document the different textile paths that exist? So let's quickly go over what textile repair even is and the parameters we set for this project. So one of the biggest problems in the reuse and repair world is the subjectivity and lack of transparent definition. So we made a big effort to make sure that we fully identified how we were defining repair and what was included. So let's just go over, some of these definitions that we used for the project. This project mainly focused on textile repair, but so often repair and reuse go hand in hand. So we can't talk about repair without talking about reuse. So what is reuse? Well, it's continuing to use an item and extending its useful life. And what is textile repair? Well, it's fixing, mending, or altering an item to a usable condition. But we included in this project worn garments, so textile-based accessories like bags, scarves, and shoes. For the sake of this project, given our resources, we excluded upholstery, linens, and other household textiles. Those are still absolutely textiles, but they exist in a much different system than clothing. So we did exclude them from this project. There are two types of textile repair. There's invisible, and invisible textile repair is when you're fixing or mending an item to a usable condition without noticeably seeing the repairs. So, for example, sewing a button on a shirt, mending a seam on a skirt. The second type is visible repair, and this is when you're fixing or mending an item to a usable condition with noticeable signs of repair and changing how it originally looked. So, for example, darning a sweater with an embroidered design, using a decorative patch to fix a jacket's elbow tear, or even dyeing a t-shirt to hide stains. In this research study, we decided to only include upcycling as it pertains to worn garments, so including textile-based accessories and shoes. So, for example, taking apart two ripped jackets and making them into one jacket, extensive patchwork design in clothing, or even using a t-shirt as the lining of a jacket, right? Those are some of those examples of upcycling. What we excluded for upcycling was, for example, taking used t-shirts and making them into a quilt. Using denim scraps to make them into upholstered furniture, right? Those we kind of put into that category of the other types of textiles. So now that we know what textile repair and reuse is, how does it exist? Well, there's two ways. There's formal and informal. So formal reuse is what I talked about earlier. So established organizations with systematic approaches to incoming and outgoing donation management. So your local thrift store, social service organizations, even ThreadUp and Poshmark, right? Online thrift stores and peer-to-peer services. So formal repair is repair businesses either with a brick and mortar or easily searchable virtual storefront. So it's your local dry cleaner with a tailor, your local cobbler, or even Cobblers Direct, who's not based in New York City, but exists virtually. And, I can send them my shoes to be fixed and they have a well-established business. Informal reuse and repair are organizations without well-established entities running them. So, for example, neighborhood clothing swaps, repair cafes, buy nothing groups, church rummage sales, things like that. So the goal of this project, was not to develop, or was, sorry, the goal of this project is to develop a systems map and understand all of the options, that exist once a New York City resident first opens their closet and realizes they have a damaged garment. Right, that's our intention. This research is not intended to provide a solution for textile waste, but rather the first step in the journey towards achieving scalable and sustainable solutions. We envision the final systems map to be almost like a choose your own adventure path, right? These are the routes that people can and do take when it comes to damaged garments and accessories. What we wanted to do with this research was to tell a story through visual depiction of this complex web of textiles in New York City. We wanted to make this ever-changing, slightly very chaotic, web of textiles into this world of textile repair into this like digestible format to pull away the invisibility cloak and start to understand and plot what is involved, pulling in supporting facts and highlighting voids and opportunities within that system to add additional context. So often you have to be able to see the whole picture in order to understand how and where to pinpoint problems and solutions. Actions and events and options just don't exist, in a vacuum. They're all interconnected. So we can't try to fix the system without understanding the system, especially from a granular level. And so I want to briefly mention how we developed this systems map to begin with. So first, we conducted our research in three ways. The first part was through interviews with key stakeholders. So we talked to different repair technicians, people in academia, repair shop owners, service providers. We wanted to hear different perspectives, not just the same one. The second part was through surveying people. We surveyed people that actively participate in reuse and repair in New York City. So it was definitely a biased population, but that was our intention. We wanted to learn from the people that were active participants in reuse and repair, the people that will prioritize reuse and repair and go the extra mile. If something is hindering them from reusing or repairing, that's an important thing to know. And the third part was data collection of informal reuse and repair. So we were, categorizing and quantifying organizations, events, groups, freelancers, artisans, places that people, places and people that you cannot easily find when you Google, where do I repair my jeans? We wanted to have an understanding of how many individuals were out there with repair skills that were selling their services through freelancer platforms. How many hyperlocal community events were taking place? How many organizations and groups and centers were hosting different mending skills workshops, things like that. So once we conducted these three portions of our research, we started to put together the map, combining the supporting data from the interviews and surveys with our reuse and repair expertise. We developed a comprehensive systems map of how garments and accessories exist in the repair spectrum within New York City. We highlighted and identified the voids and opportunities with supporting facts and quotes from the surveys and interviews. So some of the key findings from the research were not surprising to us, but some were. So, some of them were that there's a lack of public education. People just don't know that textile repair is a business type. And even if they do, they still really struggle with locating or finding a repair business or an event that will help them fix their garments, right? If you can't find it quickly on Google or Yelp or someplace, then you probably won't find it in New York City if it's that hidden. And there's also just a lack of education in general. People just don't know how to sew or even properly take care of their items to keep them in use longer. For example, stain removal, right? Learning how to remove stains so that you can keep your clothing in use. It seems really simple, but unfortunately, it's not. And for textile repair, it's often very cost prohibitive in general, to repair your garments. With the current low cost of clothing, it's not necessarily an economically viable decision for most people, depending on how much they spent in the first place. From the business side, one of the most important findings was that finding skilled repair laborers is really difficult. And as our generational workforce starts to shift and older repair workers are starting to retire and leave the workforce, that transfer of knowledge is not happening the way it used to with previous generations, where they had apprentices or family businesses, things like that. So we're kind of missing that part. But with all these negatives, all these kind of, negative findings, we also found a bunch of positives. So, for example, people will pay for nostalgia. So, things that mean something to them, they will justify the cost to keep it in use. Even if it was really cheap to begin with, if it has real value and, meaning, emotional value to them, they will spend the money to fix it and to keep it. And then also people will pay to be unique and different and cool. And I loved learning this. Props to this new generation that really want to be different. And so they'll pay for different, ways to express their personality and through their clothing, different, the embroidered design, fixing things and making them even cooler than how they bought them. If we don't start to tap into both of these takeaways, though, and if we start to take both these takeaways, we can really start to expand the textile repair for the generations that are about to have all of the purchasing power, like, right? Like the new generation that's coming out, Gen Z, they're going to have a lot of that purchasing power going forward. And so if these are the things they're doing, then how do we kind of tap into that to explore repair a bit more? So I want to again reiterate that this systems map is in no way a final solution for mitigating or eliminating textile waste. There is still so much work to be done in the textile waste, reuse, and repair sectors. But while developing the systems map, we did identify several areas of further research needed to be explored. So the first one is brand perspective. We developed the systems map from a resident's point of view, like how an average New York City resident interacts with their textiles and what their current options are. The voices we did not include in our interviews, however, were from brands. We felt that that was a completely different animal to handle and not something that we could successfully achieve in our scope of work. But further research could help expand the systems map to include another layer on how brands integrate repair or don't into their business models. As the producers of the products that consumers are purchasing, wearing, reselling, repairing, and discarding, their voice in clothing repair is crucial. The second thing we identified was a repair audit. You can't manage what you don't measure. In order to fully understand that, the levels of garment repairability that donation centers and textile sorters are receiving, we need to perform an audit. Having data indicating the types of repairs that garments require when people are dropping them off for donation will allow for some of the highlighted opportunities outlined in this research to reach the next step. And the third one was product returns. So further understanding the complexity of product returns from the viewpoint of retailers as well as consumer habits is necessary in order to continue to grow the textile repair sector of New York City and beyond, right? Product returns are often a thorn in retailers' businesses, but a service that consumers have come to expect. As consumer clothing consumption has increased, so has the reliance on returns, causing retailers to not be able to absorb returns back into their inventory. It's just too costly. So understanding the return system a bit more will allow for a more detailed view within the systems map we've developed. And the last one is technology. Repair is highly manual. It's a laborious process, and both the act of mending garments as well as identifying the necessary fixes. So, in our research, repair businesses mentioned that finding high quality labor to perform textile repairs could often be the most difficult process of owning a repair shop. So, further exploration into technological tools that exist that could help streamline repairs and be able to maximize the repairer's time and skills could be very advantageous, could be a very advantageous element to add to the systems map development and for textile repair in general. Increasing textile repair is not necessarily something we can each accomplish entirely on our own. It also will take a lot of collaborations, partnerships, behavioral shifts, and real participation from the fashion industry. So there's a few things that we're hoping the systems map will provide. The first is that to help provide visibility and awareness on how to keep clothing out of our curbside collection and ultimately the landfill. There are currently about 8.4 million people in New York City. So imagine how many pieces of clothing each of those individuals potentially, uh, you know, gets rid of. It's a lot. And it's not just sending the clothes into the garbage, right? It's through the different reuse, repair, and recycling outlets that quietly exist. We think that visually depicting the interconnectedness of our choices and existing options will help provide clarity. So many residents in New York City don't even know that different reuse and repair options even exist. So we're hoping this is the first step in awareness and understanding. The second thing is we wanted to provide a resource for smaller organizations, community groups in New York City that are doing textile repair to have something that will validate and justify the importance and necessity of the work that they are doing and, help possibly support funding that they're looking to secure. Sometimes grants ask how, your work is going to contribute to the bigger picture. And we're hoping that this can serve as something they can reference and help develop and strengthen hyperlocal reuse and repair communities. And finally, we want this to help start conversations on how different entities can partner and collaborate on solutions. Maybe a clothing brand sees this, sparks an idea to find and partner with different community repair organizations to have brand specific mending events, or a university sees this and they start throwing around the idea of piloting a textile repair option at a trade school, or helping to develop that school to work pipeline. Or a local government agency wants to tap into the vast network of local artisans with repair skills and puts out a call to action for people sewing with sewing skills to come freelance at public events, right? The opportunities are really pretty endless. And so once the systems map is completed, we intend to publish it right here on RIT's website and share it among the textile repair community and beyond so that this will be accessible to everyone. So Thank you for listening. If you have any questions about the research that we did, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk about it, go into further detail. Looking for more information on collaborations, happy to do that as well. Thank you.